Tracy Beaker Returns ran between 2010 and 2012. In that time, it had a total of 39 episodes, spanning 3 series. Today, I'll be going through my top 10 favourite episodes of the show. I'll try to explain my reasoning behind liking each episode by talking about its strengths and weaknesses. I have tried to be objective with this list, but obviously a completely unbiased ranking is impossible. Almost all of it comes down to personal preference. I'm looking forward to reading your comments expressing your own thoughts and opinions. Number 10. Good Luck Boy. In this episode, we see the characters Toby, Liam, Frank, Johnny and Gus fall for con artist Terry Fender's Florida holiday scam. Tracy is largely absent from the story, but at the end of the episode confronts Terry by threatening to call the police unless a £3,000 refund is issued. I feel this story greatly develops Toby's character. It still clearly shows his sceptical nature, while also displaying his desire to fit in and have friends. I think it is for this reason he comes across as more likeable in the episode, compared with early ones such as Anakin the DG, where he can seem annoying. The comedy is placed extremely well and done in a way that develops the characters. Toby's awkwardness in this scene is a great example of this. Despite how entertaining the episode is, the story is highly unrealistic in its portrayal of refunds and supposed company policy. If an unauthorised payment took place, then the issuing bank is required to provide a refund. Considering this, Mike and Terry's behaviour in the episode is completely unbelievable. Despite that, I enjoy this episode more than others on this list. For this reason, it cannot be ranked higher. Number 9. Fallen. Also known as the Burneywood Menace and Drained, this is the Series 2 opener. I decided to count this as one episode because they are the same story, it allows more stories to be on the list, and makes it easier for me to talk about. This story starts by showing the budget cuts Elm Tree has had to face over the last few months, before revealing the main dilemma. Elm Tree is being closed down. This concept is great as it teaches the audience that life in care homes really shouldn't be desired. It shows that care kids are seen as a nuisance to city councils, but also shows that children should be fighting for what they believe is right. These themes progress to the point where Tracy protests on Elm Tree's roof. While this attracts media attention, her actions do not go without consequences. Lily falling off the roof is one of the best scenes in children's television, narratively speaking. The scene shows that pain, struggle and fear must all be felt in order to make a difference in the world, but also shows that meaning well isn't always good enough, and that every decision should be thought through. Liam's preference to live on the street rather than to live at Burneywood makes us fear for the well-being of the other children, as it makes us question how awful the home could be. This carries over to the next part, which starts by showing Liam's complete desperation. In contrast to doing burger die scans in the last series, Liam is glad to see a single 50p coin. We then cut to Liam's dire sleeping conditions and theft of his bag. This all really allows us to sympathise with him, and, as I said before, with the other characters, as we are led to believe that they are suffering greater. However, I'm not a huge fan of the rest of the story. There are definitely some good moments in Fallen, but I feel on a whole that Burneywood Menace is stronger. For instance, Carmen's dislike and nastiness towards Lily feels slightly forced into the episode. Instead, I would have preferred Carmen to be the only one sticking up for Lily. That would have really developed her character and shown that she can be extremely kind and caring despite the nastiness and cruelty she's been through. Instead, we make Sapphire dislikable, as she's badly influenced Carmen by making her a mindless follower. Also, it still feels like Elm Tree should be closed down at some point, especially considering a child was hospitalised. The first half of the story is definitely stronger for me. If the entire story was as good as part 1, then I could see this being higher on the list. Number 8. Full Circle. Also known as Tracy Beaker Superstar and New Lives Eve, this is the Series 1 opener. This is a phenomenal story that introduced Tracy Beaker to a new generation, while also managing to entertain fans of the original show, The Story of Tracy Beaker. Tracy Beaker Superstar's opening shot slowly pans out to reveal Tracy being interviewed on television about her new book, Who Cares, Tracy Beaker. This view is disrupted though, as Harry is seen messing around with the TV wires and as a result disrupted the signal. This is great as it puts the audience attention onto the children while also showing what Tracy's been up to. Over the next minute we see glimpses of every character and are shown their basic traits. We already know that Carmen is needy, Harry is cheeky and that Sapphire is moody. The only new character we aren't yet shown is Liam, who we see for the first time on the run being chased by an angry man and police officer. Liam's separate introduction infers that he's different from the other children, older, sassier, wiser and overall more important to the stories. By this point, Tracy has been taken to the police station after she stole £6,000 from Cam, committing credit card fraud. This concept is an interesting one, as it subverts Story Tracy Beaker's audience expectations that Tracy would become more trustworthy and less selfish. It also acts as a plot device, giving reason for Tracy to begin work at the dumping ground. Despite Cam dropping the charges, Tracy doesn't get off scot-free. She has been challenged to write a 500-word weekly newspaper column. This acts as somewhat of a series arc, which leads up to the finale in which Tracy is offered a job as a junior reporter. The rest of the story sees Tracy working at Elm Tree. After being late to work and letting down the children, she is almost fired, but the kids persuade Mike to give her a second chance. Like with Fallen, I find the second half of the story more dull. Certain aspects of the episodes, such as Tracy's mum's letter and Johnny's scissor-cut trousers, feel underdeveloped or redundant. Nevertheless, Full Circle is a fantastic introduction to the franchise, and one I think outdoes the first episode of the story of Tracy Beaker. Number 7. The Werewolf. This episode sees Sapphire's brother, Riff, come to visit Elmtree after running away from home. This episode is formatted similarly to Good Luck Boy, in that Tracy is largely absent, but at the end convinces the guest star to do the right thing, albeit in this episode she does so without blackmail. Also like Good Luck Boy, this episode has plenty of laughs that are done in ways that develop the characters. Liam's penguin dance is hilarious and shows his competitiveness and pride. This story greatly develops Sapphire's character, as it newly shows her caring nature while also displaying her typical want of privacy. By the end of the episode, Sapphire realises that the children care for her as she does them, and that living at the dumping ground is better than being with her father. The reason I've ranked this episode far higher than Good Luck Boy is because the plot isn't fundamentally flawed. However, some of the acting in this episode is really poor and spoils my enjoyment quite a bit. Number 6. Moving on. After her newspaper columns, this episode sees Tracy apply for a junior reporter job and decide to leave the dumping ground. To be hired, Tracy must first write an article about life at Elmtree from the children's point of view. The children feel unloved by Tracy at her decision to leave and therefore, at first, do not accept to be interviewed by her. As the episode progresses though, we see more of the kids answering Tracy's questions and agreeing to be in the paper. Though Tracy is given the job, she chooses not to take it and instead continues to work at the dumping ground. In my opinion, this is the perfect way to end the first series of a show. It allows for expansion into a second series, but if it weren't able to be produced, fans of the series wouldn't feel like the characters got an unsatisfying ending. Even in episode 13, the writers still greatly develop the characters. We learn that Liam isn't a thief, Gina appreciates Tracy's input, T values loyalty but still has a mind of her own, and why Sapphire somewhat dislikes Tracy. This episode is by no means faultless. I feel Gus is heavily glossed over. It might have been interesting for him to be the only one that didn't mind Tracy going. We don't ever see him decide to be interviewed, and I find his and Tracy's fourth wall break at the end rather cringy. But these are nitpicks really. This episode is by far the best series finale of Tracy Beaker Returns. Number 5. Anarchy in the DG. While Mike is ill and Gina out, Tracy is tasked with looking after the kids by herself. Although Tracy is liked by all the children, shown in this episode more than any other is that she is unable to care for them in a responsible way. Precautions such as checking the eating habits, locking the office door and asking Cam for help would have prohibited the mayhem that unfolds. Gus's need for attention, Toby's constant panic, Sapphire's nagging and Gina's annoying advice cause Tracy to progressively get more stressed and overworked to the stage where she is unaware that Liam and Frank have left. This results in the two making £35 scamming people and being pushed around by an incredibly nasty man. Unfortunately, this episode has many problematic moments and concepts. Gina shouldn't have left Tracy in charge, the nasty pizza pie man overacts, and the Ebola epidemic team arriving is over the top. It's difficult for me to justify my high rating of the episode, but what it all comes down to in the end is personal enjoyment. I find it incredibly fun to watch Elmtree descend into total anarchy. Liam and Frank offer fantastic comedic moments, as does Gus. It's just a very amusing episode. Number 4. A Day at the Beach. The plot begins with a mystery. Everyone except Johnny is excited to go to the seaside. Why? As the episode continues, more odd and bewildering behaviour from Johnny follows. Why didn't he want Harry to have the bucket and spade? Why did he give Mike the petrol pump? Why did he sabotage the sat-nav? This all adds to Johnny's controlling persona, but not in a dislikable way, as it was explained earlier by the book that Johnny is only controlling out of habit, and in order to keep his sister safe. All the mysteries and previous character development make the conclusion extremely satisfying to watch. A few lines of dialogue really add to the Taylor's backstory and help the audience realise why they were put in care. It also helps that this episode aired after Viva Carmen. Despite that episode's flaws, it does a great job at showcasing the care kids' parents' abhorrent attitudes. T and Johnny's story isn't the only one in the episode, however. The episode explores Lily's guilt, Tracy's nosiness, and Mike and Gina's friendship. The episode even spends time developing the side characters somewhat. The service station manager turns from dislike of the children to fear. This can be heard in his high-pitched voice as he asks them to leave. Unfortunately, there are many geographical oddities in the episode, as well as some minor structural issues. For example, the time it takes to get to the beach is confusing. Elmtree and the road's filming location suggests the journey should be short, but the dialogue indicates lots of time has passed. Still, these issues do not affect my enjoyment. A Day at the Beach is a quirky, amusing, and overall entertaining way to spend 30 minutes watching. Number 3. Grandad. As Frank prepares to go fishing, the tragic news of his granddad's passing angers, confuses, and above all greatly saddens him. As more things go wrong for Frank, he increasingly finds it difficult to manage his emotions. However, the dumping ground kids build a park bench dedicated to Eric Matthews. When the bench is revealed to Frank, he is nearly lost for words, but it is obvious that his friend's support has and will continue to help him overcome his bereavement. This episode tackles the topic of grief really well. For one, Chris Slater's acting is sublime, but also the balance between comedic and emotional scenes act as a metaphor for grief. It shows that it's fine to feel sad, so long as it doesn't stop you from experiencing the fun things in life. As we're now in the top 3, it's increasingly difficult for me to talk about issues with the episodes. The worst thing I can say about Grandad is that the ending with the maggots is slightly weak. Something Tracy Beaker likely has to do because it's a kids show is forcefully end the stories on a happy note. A Day in the Country is an obvious example. If we could get past this, then I would have chosen to end the episode with a single tear running down Frank's face. Number 2, Out of Control. While Liam and Frank are in town, they spot a mobility scooter with its keys in. Being his thoughtless and reckless self, Liam decides to give the machine a ride. However, when Liam tries to brake, he falls to the floor and damages the vehicle. The owner of the scooter, Mr. Spooner, presses charges against Liam. This leads to a trial at a magistrate's court. Probably helped by the fact a police officer saw the crime take place, Liam is sentenced to a week's community service at the old people's home in which Spooner resides. What I love most about this episode is how Liam and Spooner's relationship develops. Understandably, Spooner is initially full of hatred for Liam, and Liam considers Spooner as an old-fashioned bore. However, while Liam works at the home, he starts feeling regretful for his actions. This regret leads to him helping Spooner with his limited mobility, in more ways than one. During a dizzy spell, he guides Spooner to his chair, but Liam also helps to get a new scooter, after realising Eddie was a conman. As they spend more time together, Liam realises that Spooner has incredibly interesting stories to tell, and while we don't see Liam talk to Spooner about his adventures, I'm sure within the week those conversations would have taken place. The subplot surrounding Gus and Jenny offers fantastic comedic relief from the more serious things that take place, though I find that it detracts a bit too much from the main plot. Number 1, Big Brother. Now, I've seen many comments saying that this is the worst episode of the show. What they usually say is along the lines of, Liam was the best character and Tracy Beaker doesn't work without him. While I agree that the show was worse without Liam, we shouldn't blame this episode for the programme's decline. Rather, we should blame subsequent episodes for not creating a good replacement character. Yes, Rick's purpose was to replace Liam, no question. The issue with Rick, though, is his major lack of development and unique traits. Take this scene in Justine Littlewood Returns. Why is Rick being a moral support to Tracy? He barely knows her. Answer, because that's what Liam would have done. Anyway, on to Big Brother. This episode starts with a bang as we see Liam approach a pirate DVD store, demanding a refund. After being pushed away and laughed at by the stall owners, Liam becomes incredibly frustrated and kicks the table down. This leads to the sellers chasing him across town. During this chase, Liam falls onto a woman whose handbag contents fall out. Liam developed in Out of Control to become a much kinder and thoughtful person. His newly found compassion sadly backfires for him, as the woman believes he's stealing. The punishment he faces for his uncommitted crime is greater than the one in Out of Control, showing that the more caring he gets, the worse life treats him. This is all fantastic as it truly makes us sympathise with him. What I find really interesting about this episode is that it's the only one I can say doesn't have a subplot. The entire episode revolves around Liam. I think this was a wise choice, as the main character's departure from the show should heavily focus on their leaving. Otherwise, the exit can feel forced or the audience feel emotionless. The only criticisms I have of the episode are minor nitpicks that really don't spoil my enjoyment. However, if you're interested in what I've noticed, then I recommend watching a video I've made in the style of CinemaSins. So, to recap. 10, Good Luck Boy. 9, Fallen. 8, Full Circle. 7, The Werewolf. 6, Moving On. 5, Anarchy in the DG. 4, A Day at the Beach. 3, Grandad. 2, Out of Control. And number 1, Big Brother. Thank you incredibly for watching this video. Let me know your top 10 in the comments. Goodbye for now.